Excuse me for being a little bit behind on the Starfield drama as of late, as I did just have my daughter born. Been a little sick lately, but yeah, things have escalated quite a bit. Obviously, at the end of the month of August, I published my own review. I mostly enjoyed Starfield. I thought it was a pretty darn fun Bethesda game, dated in many capacities. I front-loaded a lot of my positive impressions, so a lot of people thought that I was overwhelmingly in love with this game and put a lot of my negative thoughts towards the end. Probably should have done that a little bit differently, but there was a lot of issues I had with Starfield. The bugs were still there, facial animations are still a problem, and again, that dated feeling with these Bethesda games, it's becoming more abundantly clear that their engine it's just not up to par with what we're seeing from the rest of this industry. But regardless of all of that, Starfield has enjoyed a big launch. 6 million players. I think Fallout 4 back in 2015 had around 5 or 6. I think it shipped 12 million copies, but only sold around 5 or 6 in that first week. So this is impressive for Starfield, especially because you don't have that PlayStation audience this time around. But if you go on SteamDB, you can actually see that Starfield peaked at around 330,000 players. That's pretty big, especially considering because I think most people are still playing on Game Pass rather than Steam. It just seems more financially, it makes more sense in that regard. Reviews for Starfield have been interesting. We saw a review bombing of sorts on Metacritic. It's kind of gone back and forth, and when I mean review bombing, it's just Xbox and PlayStation fans going after each other, some giving it a 1, some giving it a 10. That's why these user scores are meaningless to me in many regards, since everybody's just giving it a 10 or a 1, depending on what console I guess we cherish. But what I do find rather interesting is that on Metacritic, the overall score of Starfield is it's a lot lower than what it started off as. I think it was around like an 87, 88. It's gone down to an 83. I didn't consider Starfield I don't consider it in my top 3 games of the year. I said that immediately once the reviews dropped on my Twitter account. I think I obviously think this is Baldur's Gate 3. I think that game is just going to win it. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, without that disastrous launch, I really loved that experience, especially the journey of Cal Kestis. And Tears of the Kingdom probably going to be there. I still haven't been able to finish or play too much of it, but yeah, Starfield, it's a Bethesda game. If you like these Bethesda experiences, you're going to like Starfield. If you're not in love with Bethesda games, I just don't think that this is going to click for many people. And I think that's what we've seen online with a lot of the impressions that we've seen from other reviewers. We had Eurogamer publish their own review just the other day saying it's a game about exploration without exploration, liminal space, and I think they gave it a 6 out of 10. IGN gave it a 7 out of 10. This was controversial at first. A lot of people were very upset with IGN's impressions, and my overall opinion about this immediately was a 7 out of 10 is a fine score. It's not great, it's not bad, but I get it. I mean, you're looking at a blockbuster release. You're expecting something a little bit more impressive than a 7 out of 10, especially out of one of the most highly anticipated Xbox games in years. But yeah, they gave it a 7 out of 10, saying Starfield has a lot of forces working against it, but eventually the allure of its expansive role-playing quests and respectable combat makes its gravitational pull difficult to resist. And I said this in my own review, I think Starfield improves on a lot of the mistakes that Bethesda made with Fallout 4. The issue is Fallout 4 came out 8 years ago. The industry has drastically changed since then, and I just don't know if it's enough. And I also don't know if Starfield does a good enough of a job to set itself apart from the Elder Scrolls and Fallout, which have distinct identities. And I think a lot of people walk away from Starfield looking at it as Fallout in space, and I don't really think that's too wrong of an opinion to have about the game. But PC Gamer also giving it a 75. It's Bethesda's biggest RPG by far, but nowhere near its best. Metro, horrible website. Jesus, I hate looking at this, but yeah, another 6 out of 10. The final verdict, outdated, unambitious, and disjointed. Jim Sterling even gave a very scathing review of Starfield, giving it a 4 out of 10. Jim's known for these. He's known for these reviews. I remember when he gave Breath of the Wild, I think, a 7 out of 10. Nintendo fans were absolutely livid with it because it brought the Metacritic score down for the game. And we did see some people very upset with some of the opinions that Jim Sterling shared in his review, or their review. He said, to call Starfield the least broken Bethesda game is akin to calling any single turf the least embarrassing fascist. Then again, given how ZeniMax and Bethesda seems to treat certain employees, that comparison may hit too close to home, so some people thinking that this was a biased, political-driven review, make of that as you will. But what I do find rather what is most eye-catching is the actual Steam reviews for Starfield, because right now the game only has 77% positive reviews, and it's really interesting to me because it does seem to indicate that a lot of people are very dissatisfied with the game. And I think one of the biggest problems that Starfield has, it's in terms of the exploration, in which all of that handcrafted content is very far apart. And when you go for that procedural generation, that No Man's Sky-esque content, it just isn't that great. Again, I said this in my review, I do not care for any of that content, but when you stick to the actual handcrafted side content, especially some of those faction missions, that's where Starfield shines, I think, at least. Now, again, we did see some people comparing Starfield to Cyberpunk 2077, pointing out that it looks dated.
Starfield versus Cyberpunk 2077.
Let's see. Yeah, we have people sharing some of the physics and stuff, which I just find it funny that Cyberpunk now is being compared to Starfield. Obviously, this isn't the day one version, so some people think it's an unfair comparison, but it's just hilarious to me that Cyberpunk has come this far along, in which we're now seeing these comparisons made. But yeah, this is just the nature of Bethesda that they have to change, especially character animations. Yeah, there is swimming and stuff in some of this, but yeah, it's quite clear that Bethesda's engine is barely hanging along right now. And yeah, again, day one, that didn't exist. This didn't exist in Cyberpunk, for what it is worth. Yeah, NPC reactions are very limited. I do think that in combat you do see some improved AI, but it's, again, I think a lot of people don't think it is enough. Anyway, you get the idea with that clip, but there have been some people going very out of their way against Starfield as much. Alana Pierce, she works for Sony Santa Monica, worked on God of War Ragnarok. We had somebody saying that she should be fired for promoting Xbox games on a public platform like this. This is an example of somebody with a brain rot, because I think it's going to come as a surprise to some people, but yes, there are Xbox, there are PlayStation employees that enjoy, games. I know there was a bunch of Xbox developers. Phil Spencer himself probably enjoyed God of War Ragnarok last year. It goes both ways. I don't think that the console fanboyism, it really is just dedicated to this online space. Employees and such of these companies do not care about any of this stuff. But yeah, they call her extremely unprofessional and demonstrates a lack of loyalty and seriousness to PlayStation. Her employer, serious brain rot, seriously. We did see another example, David Jaffe. Obviously, he's known for his work on Twisted Metal, God of War, back in the day. He was having a debate with a PlayStation fanboy about their feelings on Starfield, in which they were very much against the game, calling it boring and bad.
I think the writing...
What about the intro? What about the intro was horrendous?
It just was very lackluster. Like, if you compare it to Skyrim, immediately you're fighting a dragon, and then you're sent out into the world to do anything you want. Like, literally, anything you want. Whereas this is a little bit, like I said, it's a little more shallow. It's a little bit almost more like Mass Effect, where it's more story-oriented. It's pushing you in a certain direction.
Do you think that was the choices you made? What is her name? Lynn or Lim, the lady who's your boss? Do you think part of it is just the fact that she asked you to burn the bodies and shit, and it should be more of a choice versus she forces you to do it, and it's almost like it's scripted at that point?
That's some of it.
I mean, that didn't happen at all in the game, so I'm assuming you haven't played it yet, correct?
No, I swear to God, I played it, but
like I said, some of the hate for Starfield is just people. It's console allegiance, I mean, this individual clearly did not play Starfield, as there's no burning bodies right at the beginning, and Jaffe set him up perfectly for that one, but that's what we've been seeing online. Some of it's just literally console war fanboyism, and it's so annoying to see any of this, but that's just the nature of this. That's why some of the reactions to these reviews, these 6 or 7 out of 10s, I genuinely am so tired of seeing Xbox fanboy accounts going after these reviews, saying that they're all biased against Xbox. I get there's some stuff that you can point out, but some of this, it's just Starfield didn't click for a lot of people, and it's not just game reviewers, but you're seeing that in the Steam reviews. A lot of people think it's dated. A lot of people think that Bethesda needs to improve in many regards, especially in terms of facial animation. That's one that I'm just tired of seeing, looking at these wooden faces in so many of their games. It's been going on for well over a decade now, and it does need to change, in my opinion, especially when you look at all the other developers and what they're doing with animation. And again, this is another one. This is what I was talking about. I respect everyone's opinion when it comes to Baldur's Gate 3, but in this case, when compared to Starfield, this person's trying to say that Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't hold a candle to Starfield, which is absurd. Yeah, look at this. Starfield completely owns and shits on Baldur's Gate 3, no cap, says the guy with the Starfield logo on his profile. I can't take these people seriously. But yes, there are bugs in Starfield. Again, I had some horrifying experiences, put it in my review. Some Assassin's Creed Unity-esque facial animation moments in which their faces just went completely black. It was really terrifying to look at. And one of them actually did happen during a pivotal moment in the game, a climactic moment in which all of the characters just lost all of their hair. It's Bethesda game, still has bugs, but I mean, it's nowhere near as bad as my experience with Fallout 4 and Skyrim, but it's quite clear that it's still a problem, and the bugginess that we're seeing with Bethesda games has been going on for far too long, and I do think a lot of that can be linked to their dated engine. Here we have another example of some bugs in Starfield. Yeah, the Crimson Fleet was supposed to pop out here for a fight. There they are. Yep, that's a Bethesda game for you. But there are some more serious issues, especially on PC, which is why I do think some of those Steam reviews are more negative. We had this major programming faults discovered in Starfield's code by this dev. Performance issues are not the result of non-upgraded hardware, which something that Todd said. We'll talk about that in a second. But basically, Starfield allocates its memory incorrectly where it doesn't align to the CPU page size. If your GPU drivers are not robust against this, your game is going to crash at random times. Starfield abuses a DX12 feature called Execute Indirect. One of the things that this wants is some hints from the game so the graphics driver knows what to expect. Since Starfield sends in bogus hints, the graphics drivers get caught off guard trying to process the data and end up making bubbles in the command queue. These bubbles mean the GPU has to stop what it's doing, double check the assumptions it made about the indirect execute, and start over again. Starfield creates multiple execute indirect callbacks to back instead of batching them, meaning the problem above is compounded multiple times. What really grinds my gears is the fact that the open source community has figured out and came up with workarounds to try to make this game run better. These workarounds are available to view by the public eye, but Bethesda will most likely not care about fixing the broken engine. Again, they've doubled down on this. We're going to continue on with the creation engine. I like proprietary, engines and stuff. I like some of this stuff I don't think you can do with Unreal Engine, say if Bethesda was going to make a game like Starfield. But it's so many problems with it that I don't know what the exact answer is for Bethesda, but when I do look at other publishers like CD Projekt with the Red Engine, I really wish they wouldn't move away from that. I think that has potential, especially if you get the right engineers, programmers with that. But with Bethesda, I don't know what direction they should go with, but something have to change. Instead, they double down and claim their game is optimized if your hardware is new enough. We did see Pete Hines, Bethesda's one of their heads of marketing, talk about the bugs in Starfield. He says, "We embrace chaos." We could make a safer, less buggy, less risky game if we wanted to, but what we try to lean into is player freedom. Yes, there's going to be some little things here and there where your companion might stand a little too close to you sometimes, yet the freedom you get and the things that happen because of that we absolutely love and embrace. Of course there are bugs, but does it take away from your experience, or do you have a consistent, fun game that you just can't stop playing and experimenting with? I've never been on board with this bugs are a feature thing, and that's kind of what I'm getting from this little paragraph in this interview, and I don't like it because, yes, there are some silly bugs. I mean, here's one of them. I like this. You see this in a lot of Bethesda games. You can find a loot cave in a puddle. That's hilarious. That's cool. But the problem is there are more substantial bugs in which people literally are having their games crashing nonstop. Some quests are just completely bugged out. That happened during my playthrough. And another thing, I did not get a review copy from Bethesda. I think that's something a lot of people are very confused by with my review that came out. I did not receive one. It was actually an unofficial copy that I received. I can't really go into how I got it, but Bethesda actually rejected giving me a review copy for Starfield, which isn't surprising. You guys have seen my coverage last year of this company, and the fact that I was able to even find an unofficial copy and get it through my team, It was awesome, but yeah, some people thought that this was sponsored by Bethesda. No, they didn't want to give me a copy, guys. But yeah, bugs as a feature, it's silly because there are some bugs that they're going to happen, but there's a lot of stuff that is unacceptable in my eyes, especially with how Starfield launched. But we'll continue forward. We did have this interview coming from Todd Howard. This is what a lot of PC players and a lot of people are upset about.
Big question from many. Why did you not optimize this game for PC?
We did. It's running great. It is a next-gen PC game. We really do push the technology, so you may need to upgrade your PC for this game, but it's got a lot of great stuff going on in it, and the fans are responding awesome.
Might need to upgrade your PC. That's the most chat answer that Todd could give. Obviously, people weren't happy with this, but upgrade your PC. I mean, some people have very high-end PCs that have been struggling to run Starfield because of those technical issues, some of which are connected to this, which we just talked about. But there are other issues with Starfield. Todd Howard and his team have been talking about it, such as vehicles. Todd Howard pointed out that there's spaceships and jetpacks in the game. This is one of the criticisms of exploration in Starfield, because a lot of people feel like, yeah, having a vehicle would be a lot more convenient. But I think the problem with vehicles, especially with Bethesda, is that outside of the ship combat that we have in the game, I really don't know if they can deliver on vehicles in like on the ground and stuff. The last time they did it was what, horses and Skyrim, and that was horrible. I feel like this is an excuse. Spaceships and jetpacks is not the answer, and it's just something that I know a lot of people are frustrated by, especially with a game that is focused on exploration of these planets and stuff. But as we continue forward, Bethesda did have their first update. They announced that they're going to have a bunch of new stuff coming to the game. A lot of this stuff feels like there were problems with Fallout 76 and even Fallout 4, which is why it's weird we're going through this once again. But like, they have said that they're going to have city maps. This is another big criticism I had of the game. They're going to be adding city maps. They also mentioned within here there's going to be an eat button for food, which is great because that was another criticism I had. You have all these like +5 to your health and shit, and it's so annoying because you have to go to your inventory, then you have to click down on every single one. It'd be a lot more convenient when you're actually, you know, just exploring about and you can just eat it when you see it, but it's not possible right now. But yeah, there's definitely a need for a lot of quality of life improvements. Some of this obviously being HDR calibration menu, FOV slider. Don't know why that isn't there. Same thing with NVIDIA DLSS support. That is there in an unofficial capacity right now. I know another modder tried to paywall it through his Patreon. That failed miserably, but yeah, this is another thing that should have been there day one. Now, continuing forward, this was a big thing that was talked about endlessly online for a couple of days. I don't really have any strong feelings on this, but if you haven't heard, there are pronouns in Starfield. It's something that you see for a few seconds. I'm not going to say it's not a big deal because it is sort of cringe in my opinion, but it does feel like something that you can skip over. And I get that a lot of people have been arguing that this is a slippery slope, but it did start with this. Let me show you the clip. This is why this conversation exploded online. People calling Starfield woke.
Then, with all of that laid out in front of me, I love nothing more than to be dragged out at every fucking conceivable opportunity so you can fucking current day us. Sorry, did you want to get immersed in our world? Yeah, well, guess what? Fucking pronouns!
Okay, that was a bit extreme, but I get the perspective that he's been having and a lot of people have been trying to point out. And I understand it, but this does feel like the nature of this industry, and I get a lot of people want to push back on this type of stuff because they think that this will become normalized. This will be what's expected with RPGs in the future, but I do feel like a video like this is just going to encourage more game developers to go down that path, and I don't know if a boycott or outrage is really going to stop this because it feels like just the natural progression of this industry. But as some people have pointed out, the Axeman has been one of the most vocal proponents against people that have been, you know, upset about pronouns. As you can see in this clip, virgin Starfield hater, average Starfield enjoyer. What I did find more hilarious is the fact that Starfield lets you use pronouns. The game still misgenders you. It doesn't even work properly because Bethesda bugs, obviously. We did see Dr. Disrespect jumping into this, some people going after him in his past. he did not get a sponsorship deal with Starfield, and he went to Bethesda's head of marketing, Pete Hines' profile, and he saw Pronouns, and I guess he contributed or attributed the fact that he has that there with why he didn't get his sponsorship deal. Make of that as you will. Now, what I do find kind of absurd and kind of insane is the fact that Nexus Mods, they actually confirm that the site will delist any mods that remove pronoun modifier from Bethesda's Starfield. And that is because they're trying to uphold diversity and inclusivity. That is in their own words. And I find that kind of wild, you know. I don't really consider pronouns really that super... I just don't get it, you know. I'm really of the mindset I don't really think that when you have mods that literally allow you to kill kids in some of these games, but you draw the line at some pronouns, I don't get it, but that's just me. I don't see why that would be where the line is, but I guess that's where Nexus Mods, that's how they feel about it. But we also did see some other outrage, some stuff. We had a Gaming Christian account being upset that you could flirt with Sam Coe in Starfield. The funny thing is you can completely avoid any of this by, you know, going with the friendship option. But the point is, all of this Starfield stuff, all of this nonsense, it's just been totally absurd. And I'm honestly happy that the game has finally been out for a couple weeks. We're kind of getting close to the point which people are moving on. I do have questions about Bethesda moving forward, especially as they begin work on the Elder Scrolls 6. I really don't know if their engine, especially once this game comes out, it'll be like 2028. And I feel like if you look at those facial animations and just the dated feeling that you get from these Bethesda experiences, I really don't know if that engine's going to hold up. Those review scores for Starfield have been not pretty. I mean, I was really thinking that this was going to be a high 80s game. It actually ended up having review scores which are a little lower than Fallout 4, which is kind of crazy in my opinion, especially because Starfield improves on a lot of what Fallout 4 did, especially the combat and gameplay, in my opinion. But again, it's been 8 years, and maybe too little too late. I guess that's the best way to describe with Starfield and Bethesda. But have you been playing Starfield? What are your thoughts on the experience? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, or if you found any informative value, and consider subscribing for more videos like this. And I'll see you later.